Roshan Packages Limited, the fastest growing business group and leading name in corrugation and flexible packaging in Pakistan.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to No Plastics. Today we're going to be talking to Mr. Merlijn van Essen, who is the sales manager for PureLoop, which is an EREMA Group company. PureLoop specializes in the production of plastic recycling machines in the pre-consumer segment. Mr. Merlijn has been working for PureLoop for the last 3 years now, and previously he was in the metal, rail, automation, and compressed air industry. But due to his passion for machinery, energy optimization, and sustainability, Mr. Merlijn works for PureLoop because it is a perfect fit. At the moment, Mr. Merlijn van Essen is responsible for 42 countries, including Pakistan. Without further ado, let's have a chat with Mr. Merlijn van Essen, who is joining us from Austria. Hello and welcome to No Plastics platform, Mr. Merlijn. How are you today?
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you for the really nice introduction. And looking forward to be able to answer your questions as they come.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We have some questions for you, and especially about recycling plastics and the machinery you sell to 42 countries, including Pakistan. First question would be, you have recently visited Pakistan and have personally seen some companies. What is your perception about Pakistani plastics industry and its potential?
Basically, to look at the potential, so I visited a couple of different companies. One was making irrigation pipes. The other one is basically yarn production, PP raffia production, film production. So basically the main things, as well as injection molding. Those were a little bit, some smaller companies, some bigger companies, some mixed companies. So there's quite a lot of potential on the Pakistani market. There's a huge potential for post-consumer applications. So basically post-consumer applications being collecting waste after it has been used by the consumer. So it's not touched at the moment, but otherwise, when I look at the companies itself and the abilities, you see some companies, they move quite quickly, especially younger companies who tend to invest in better quality machinery. Plastics is the third or fourth export commodity for Pakistan. So there is a lot of potential.
PureLoop is a company of EREMA Group, as we mentioned earlier. What is your specialty and what applications your company specializes in recycling plastics?
So basically our clients are producers. They produce PP raffia, they produce films, they produce yarns, they produce injection molding with or without glass fiber, they produce irrigation pipes, those kinds of things. And basically what we do as PureLoop, we build a so-called shredder extruder combination, which basically helps our client to achieve 4 goals when it comes to recycling. And those 4 goals are generally, first of them is they don't want to have someone running around the machine. The less operator, the better. Because the thing is just that an operator can do something on a blown film line, for example, at the same time. They can do something on a yarn production line at the same time. So this is extremely important. The next thing is basically what we do is to minimize maintenance. So for example, our machines, so the shredder and the extruder are on the same line, which allows us to use only one single engine. Okay. One single engine means less energy consumptions. We use a twin pusher, which is basically helping to push material at interval, which allows a much more stable production. Okay. So this is from the energy optimization side. And basically afterwards, they want to have low running costs. Of course, everybody wants to have low running costs. That's one of the main things that everybody's looking for. Unfortunately, it's still not completely free. But that's one of the things we're working on, for example, with one engine compared to other companies who use 2 or 3 gearboxes, those kinds of things. And basically the fourth factor for us is quality.
Right.
because our clients are producers.
Right.
And they need the best possible quality at any time, because the better the quality, the more they can feed back.
Exactly.
So for us, it's something that's extremely important. So this is where we concentrate on.
Mr. Merlin, as we all know that, Pakistan's biggest industry is textiles and have been there for long. Do you have any applications of recycling for textiles? If yes, then what kind of recycling is possible for textiles?
So basically for textiles, we're currently working with a couple of European groups, which are quite big. We're doing testing, a lot of testing on polyamide applications, for example. In this case, we are able, for example, to inject nitrogen during the extrusion process, which allows basically a minimum of yellowing. It also helps on the properties of the material itself.
Okay.
Afterwards, we also work on PET yarn. We tend to lose a little bit of the IV on PET yarn due to the combination that we use. So a shredder extruder combination. This is for all shredder extruder combinations that are used on PET yarn. They lose a little bit of the IV properties. It's because it's not done under vacuum. So there's a little bit of a difficulty in that. For most producers, it doesn't really matter if you lose a little bit of the IV, because they generally have a reactor afterwards where they can re-increase the IV to the level that they need, so around 0.6, 0.64 of the IV. So we're working quite a lot on these applications. For us, the nice thing, or for the producers, the nice thing is that they can basically take a whole bobbin and just throw it in the machine. At the same time, they have the possibility to take large chunks of yarn and throw it on the conveyor belt. The machine basically does the rest. So these are a couple of the things, but for yarn production, the main and most important thing is filtration. Right. So we are able to do filtration with 10, 15 microns on the filter, which helps the yarn producer to have a longer life on their spinning packs. Nowadays, it's quite difficult. So it is something, unfortunately, it was the first time I visited Pakistan. So I only was able to see one company, but there are a lot of companies who have a potential and who are actually looking for these kinds of solutions.
Perfect, perfect. As you know, this is an online era, and recently you've done some webinars in Pakistan for recycling plastics. What was your feedback from the industry, and which industry you think is more interested as far as in-house recycling of plastics is concerned?
Basically, each industry is interested by doing plastic recycling, or should be interested by doing plastic recycling. The thing is, what most producers tend to forget is that waste is actually money laying around their shops. The thing is, if you go to Europe and you have waste laying around your shop and you want to get rid of it, there's always the possibility of selling it.
Right.
What a lot of people do, they get minimum money for it, because you pay, for example, let's say a ton of polyethylene currently is around 600 euros. So you buy a ton of virgin material. You have your production cost, of course, which are, for example, 100 euros or 200 euros for 1 ton. So actually your ton of polyethylene finished material is around 800 to 900 euros. 300 euros, you make a minus of around 600 euros. If you send it to a recycler, you're basically only get back 100, maybe 950 euros, but you're also going to pay the transport, the process, and so on. So the material becomes even more expensive. If we talk about in-house recycling, it is extremely important to look at the type of machine, the possibilities you have. There are two different types of machinery. It always depends on the application that you have. Sometimes it's better to use a preconditioning unit or a densifier. Sometimes it's better to use a shredder extruder combination. It depends on the logistics that you have. So those are a couple of things which are, well, people have to look for. And this is basically what I also got back from the webinars that we did. That companies are actually looking for these solutions. They start to understand that waste is money, and this is actually money they can feed back into their productions. So actually it is quite effective, these webinars, and we're looking forward to do the next couple of them to basically get more people on the same side of things.
We have a somewhat technical kind of question for you as well. Do you think that recycled plastic loses its mechanical properties? If yes, how much and what percentage of recycled material we can reuse along with the prime material?
First thing is look at the type of material. For example, if you take polyarmide, white polyarmide, it is very sensitive to oxidation.
Okay.
So it is a material that I wouldn't put into a densifier, for example, because it would stay in there and turn for 10 to 15 minutes. So then you of the color properties, so to say, for the theme of yarn. So this would be something that I would extrude on a shredder extruder combination. Now, the same goes for PE materials. If it's just a plain film or if it's injection molding, it just depends on the application. So first thing is the right machine. Of course, you always have a little bit of degradation. It's something you can't prevent, unfortunately, because you reheat molecules, so you actually let them vibrate again to find new connections. So the only material which is interesting is, for example, PET, as PET tends to increase the IB levels and those kinds of things. Afterwards, what we see quite a lot, or what I saw in Pakistan, was, for example, a company who built their own preconditioning unit, so a densifier. The barrel was heated with normal gas burners. So basically, this means you have absolutely no control over the shearing. You have no control over the temperature. You have no control over the speed that the material runs through it. So you basically end up with a material which is completely destroyed. So there's really a lot to look at the machine. Does it help me to prevent oxidation? Does it provide the right shearing rate? Does it provide the right screw? Is the pelletizing the right type of for me or for the application? So there are a lot of things that you have to look at. So yes, you always lose a little bit, unfortunately.
Another thing, are there any certifications of using recycled plastics? If there are, then what particular certifications are required? So
basically, it depends a little bit on the law, local laws. For example, in pipe production, if I look at HDP P100 pipes for gas and water applications, in those applications, it's in most countries prohibited to refeed, regrind materials into it. It has to do with the safety. It also has to do with the things that, of course, if you have a machine which is heated by a couple of gas burners, you can't control the quality. So, and when you put gas through it, well, you need to ensure that you have the right quality. So these are a couple of things. So you always have to look at the law. We know for most countries that for pipes, it is not possible, especially when it's water contact, gas contact, to refeed materials into it. However, there are a lot of companies doing it. There are companies regrinding this and feeding it back. It just depends on the quality of the machine that you have. Sometimes it's noticed, sometimes it's not noticed. For example, a lot of people do grinding. There you noticed those kind of things pretty quickly because you have burned edges which appear in the pipe, you have breakages, and so on. Now, on the other side, if you go to, for example, food packaging, and this is always pretty interesting, in most countries, the law basically says as long as the material doesn't leave the company, you're allowed to feed it back as much as you want.
Okay.
So it's really one of the things that has to do with local laws. For Pakistan, as far as I know at the moment, as far as I have spoken to people, it is possible to regrind inside of a production company and to feed it back without any problems, as long as the material doesn't leave the factory to be repalletized at the professional recycler. If you then get it back, you have to get certifications. Generally, with food packaging concerns, it's FDA certification, and this is quite difficult to obtain. So this is one of the things where we always say, well, look at the local laws, what they say. If you produce really in-house application and in-house material, keep it in-house. Then you can feed it back. But like I said, it depends on the local laws.
Last but not the least, your views and suggestions on this No Plastics platform and the things we're doing right now. Any suggestions to improve this channel at the moment, really for the benefit of companies in Pakistan and creating the much needed awareness about knowing plastics instead of, rejecting them?
Yeah. So basically my view on this whole thing helps to get an insight on a lot of different applications. So I would really like to thank you for this opportunity that you're giving me, or the company PureLoop especially, to basically explain a little bit about plastic recycling.
Right.
At the same time, it's extremely important that people start to understand the importance of in-house recycling, the importance of using maybe machinery that might be a little bit more expensive to invest, but has a better running profitability over the years. Because it's always easy to buy a cheap machine.
Exactly.
If it breaks, you buy another one.
Exactly.
But if you can't control the quality, then it's quite difficult. And the thing is, what you are actually doing is basically explaining, helping people to see the inside of plastics and the importance of plastics. I'm a big fan of post-consumer recycling. It's extremely important.
Right.
But you have to segregate the materials according to certain types of materials, which is recyclable, which is not recyclable.
Exactly.
A life without plastic is not possible. It will never be possible. Because basically the thing is, seeing the current situation, well, we wouldn't have mouth masks or PP non-woven masks to wear if there wasn't no plastic. We would all be grabbing our vegetables by hand every time if there was no plastic to protect it from people touching it. So there would be no hand sanitizers in bottles. So is plastic something that we should replace? No, absolutely not. We should make more awareness of how to use it, where to use it back, how to bring it back, and what can be done with plastics. And that's actually what your podcast, or what the whole thing you're doing is based on. And that's what I absolutely appreciate.
Exactly. Thank you very much for, appreciating, and thank you very much for your time today and your most valuable input, for our platform. We thank you very much, Mr. Merlijn van Essen.
Thank you very much for your time. If there are any other questions anytime, you're welcome, or your listeners are welcome to contact me.
Thank you very much once again.
Viewers, do tell us how you like the programs, and don't forget to give us your feedback on our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter platforms. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe button on our YouTube channel of No Plastics. It's time for me to sign off. Take very good care of yourselves. Allah Nagaban.